Well, it seems like almost every story that I do for you, I say, this is my favorite animal. Now, you know I like donkeys. And good, Izzy knew that. You know I like monkeys, but it's another one I like. Penguins. Do you like penguins? Well, and can we put the slide up, please? And this story is about penguins. And I don't know if you know the penguins, but they actually live in the Antarctic where it's absolutely freezing cold. But then the mother, pardon? Not the African penguins, that's true. Thank you for that important correction. I'm talking about emperor penguins who think I do live in the Antarctic, but you're right, there's all sorts of types of penguins, and there's penguins in Australia and all sorts of places. So thank you for that correction, Eliana, I appreciate that. Where was it? Yes, penguins, and these ones are in the Antarctic, and it's really cold, but you know, the mother penguins actually lay eggs kind of in the middle of winter. And what they do is they lay the egg, and then they basically pass it from the mother penguin over to the dad penguins. And they place it in their feet because it's actually too cold to lay them in the ground. It's so cold because that would damage the egg. So the mother penguin passes it to the father penguin, and then the mother penguin, who's been going through the pregnancy with the egg, ends up walking miles, sometimes for as long as 2 months, to go and feed because she's really hungry. But all the father penguins gather there in a big group, and it's in the middle of winter, and it's like 120-mile-an-hour winds. It's minus 50 degrees centigrade, which is way colder than even here this morning. I shouldn't be complaining. I shouldn't even be complaining about the cold compared to these penguins. But you know, what happens is they're really cold, but you know how they end up keeping warm? They all gather in a big group, and the ones on the outside, you know, they basically shelter the other ones, and the ones in the middle, it can get as warm as 75 degrees in the center of these thousands of penguins. And then they'll take turns, the ones in the center will go to the outside, and everyone moves in. And these are thousands of penguins that are coordinating this. So they basically work together to keep each other warm so that each of the eggs can survive. And then eventually, after a couple of months, the mother penguins come back. The eggs have, pun? The dad goes to feed, that's right, Izzy, because they've laid the eggs hatch by that time. And so the mother takes care of the new chick, and the dads go off to feed because the father penguins can lose half of their body weight. Yeah, then they just keep going and eating. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But I think that's an amazing story of just the commitment they do, because they don't try and move, but they work together to help each other and keep each other warm in these really, really tough conditions. So, I mean, and Jason mentioned during the announcements of being an animal rights activist, but the fact is we can learn so much from animals, and that's why it's so important that we all do something to take care of animals, because they can teach us so much. But I think that's just a great example of commitment, because the effort they put in so that they can raise the new chicks. So thank you all so much for being here. I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer, meditation, and reflection. The word of Michelle Collins. Spirit of life, we come carrying the burden of our own discouragements. The job that didn't work out, the relationship that ended, the dream deferred once again. Some mornings it feels easier to stay in bed than face another day of uncertainty. Yet here we are, gathered in this place that reminds us hope is not a feeling. We wait for a choice to be made. Hold gently those among us who struggle to find reasons for hope, whose depression whispers lies about their worth, whose anxiety paints tomorrow in fearful colours. Grant us patience with our own healing and compassion for our stumbling towards wholeness. May we learn that hope is not the absence of struggle, but the decision to keep walking through it. Help us remember that even our smallest steps forward matter, that courage comes not from feeling brave, but from acting despite our fear. May we find hope in the unexpected places, in the kindness of strangers, in our own capacity to survive, in this community that holds us when we cannot hold ourselves. I invite you to join me in a time of silence.
So this month's topic is choosing hope, as we said, but we've heard about so many of the struggles that people are having. Right now, I'm going to talk about science, but it'll connect. Bear with me. I love science, deeply, deeply so, as a spiritual pursuit. Through years as a scientist and science educator, I find the supernovas and the cosmic rays of the universe inspiring as miracles of creation. But what I especially love about science is the sense of progress towards the truth. Scientists aren't always right. They make a lot of mistakes, especially on the first try, but science builds on itself. We've seen miraculous advances in medicine and other fields. As Isaac Newton said, "If I have seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants," meaning his discoveries were based on the great scientists before him. By shared commitment, each new discovery in science lets us progress further. And I think that's a great metaphor for hope. What hope is built on is community, committed to building better on what came before. My own particle physics work didn't have major breakthroughs, but even so, there was a sense of contributing to that greater progress. Now, despite loving science, I don't love all the uses that it's been put to. Through scientific methods, social media has gotten stunningly good at answering the narrow question of what will get you to click on this link, to the point that it's addictive of getting ourselves discouraged and outraged, and millions of people are hunched over, scrolling by the glow of their phones and thinking less about whether each post is true or its impact, but instead about how they make us feel or whether they support our cause. Now, this problem really hit home for me for my work in educational technology. 6 years ago, I was working for a startup that analyzed student data and when they're working online. So it's looking at exact timing of how they speed up or slow down or which things they look at, all to analyze the patterns of their learning. And our biggest client was a tutoring service in my father's country of South Korea. South Koreans care a lot and pay a lot for education. But part of looking at that data was seeing how many of these Korean kids were sitting in tutoring, often for 6 or 8 hours after a full day of school. And I was horrified and ashamed. These kids needed time to play, to experience, and it felt like my analyzing their clicks in a tutoring center was narrow-mindedly pursuing the wrong question. For how we look to help them learn better, we need to look at them as people, as whole people. And I think that's just how social media looks at what we click on instead of our lives. In the study of education, we talk about a growth mindset, how students learn better if they believe that they can change. And so if they have an identity like I'm bad at math, they don't learn as well. But even if they have an identity, I'm good at math, that means that as soon as they encounter trouble, they think, well, I'm not that good at math. And it's really about the hope for change that enables their learning, that having the mindset itself that change is possible improves how they learn. For me, in education, my growth mindset was realizing that working in the startup where I was being part of the problem and not being part of a solution. It pushed my current shift into going back into teaching, despite a considerable drop in pay. But I felt like I could improve the lives of kids rather than just their cliques. As a kid with a Korean father, I realized I grew up with many of these same educational pressures. To focus on classes and tests, however, with my own son, so with my son, I tried to do differently. I went with him to dance classes, I played games with him, encouraged him to read books for fun. For me, the metaphor for hope is that commitment. That the commitment to lifelong learning, to lifelong commitment to change. In science, we can change by building on the discoveries that went before. In education, we can take how we learned as students and as children, and when it is our time to teach and to parent, we can use those lessons to do better. In life and in community, we can learn, we can commit to growing and giving better than how we grew up. So I think a big inspiration for this, in part, was my work. I felt my time with the choir has also been great. Our song that is coming up is called Ad Astra by Jacob Navarud. He's now the composer of in residence for a gay men's chorus in Boston, but he wrote this as a song for the all-state choir in his home state of Kansas, whose state motto is Ad Astra per aspera, which means through hardship to the stars. And I think, yes, so the hope for that of going to the stars, my work in astrophysics and astronomy leading to teaching kids to find inspiration in the science and the progress that we've made.
I'd like to begin with a poem by Reverend Victoria Safford. This place from which you glimpse not only struggle, but the joy of the struggle. Our mission is to plant ourselves in the gates of hope. Not in the prudent gates of optimism, which are somewhat narrower, nor the stalwart boring gates of common sense, nor the strident gates of self-righteousness, which creak on shrill and angry hinges. People cannot hear us. They cannot pass through that. Nor the cheerful, flimsy garden gate of everything's going to be all right. But a different, sometimes lonely place, the place of truth-telling. About your own soul first of all, and its condition. The place of resistance and defiance, the piece of ground from which you can see the world, both as it is, as it could be, and as it will be. And we stand there beckoning and calling, telling people what we are seeing and asking people what they see. Those are the words of Reverend Victoria Safford. And I love that idea of hope being this piece of ground from which you can see the world as it is, as it could be, and as it will be, because right there is hope. The world, seeing it as it is, and seeing what could be, and committing to what you make it, you want it to be. At a rally, the songwriter and activist Holly Near asked people to sing a song, "We Are a Gentle, Angry People." And we're singing that's the final hymn today. And one of the lines that day was about being a hopeful people. And someone from the crowd shouted out, "I'm not feeling hopeful." Could have been one of our children in the Time for All Ages. "I'm not feeling hopeful." And Holly Near replied, "Hope is not a feeling, it's a commitment." Hope is not a feeling, it's a commitment. And I like that idea of hope being a commitment. We do often think of it as a feeling. I'm feeling hopeful today, I'm not feeling hopeful today. What does it mean for hope to be a commitment? Because ultimately, religion is about what you're willing to commit to. We all showed up here on a Sunday morning in December 2025. There was a commitment to show up here. And religion is about what are we willing to commit to. Because coming to church renews our courage and hope as well as what we want to commit those hopes to. I remember in the 1980s, I was doing a lot of anti-apartheid work, trying to overcome the government in South Africa. And I remember hearing Archbishop Desmond Tutu in an interview, and this is in the 1980s, and he was asked, who is going to be the first South African black president? And without missing a beat, he said, Nelson Mandela. And I thought, that's ridiculous. He's 66 years old. I was 20 at the time, so that seemed ancient. He's been in prison for 20 years. How could he possibly be president? But I could tell by the way that Archbishop Tutu said that he was committed and he was going to do everything in his power to make that commitment a reality. And then when Nelson Mandela was released from prison in the 1990s, and I heard his first speech, some of you may remember his first speech, it's like, he's going to be president. He had that same commitment, but he did it from a place of great, considering being in prison almost 30 years at that point, from a great place of great forgiveness, of great charity, and of great loving kindness to all South Africa. We often think of hope as a prediction of the future, and the Czech president and playwright and dissident Václav Havel said, hope is not a prediction of the future, it is an orientation of the spirit, an orientation of the heart. It transcends the world that is immediately experienced and is anchored somewhere beyond its horizons. Those are the words of Václav Havel. The trouble is, when I think of hope being a commitment, sometimes I think, is that just naive optimism? Or even worse, is it just insipid idealism? What does it mean, hope being a commitment? And I think there's a lot around that. Making a commitment is setting that intention. That intention of where you want to go and committing to doing it. And I think of about 2016. I think one of the things that we do with commitments, and you see this, we'll all do it in January with New Year resolutions, we'll make this wishy-washy statement about something we'd like to do, like go to the gym or cook more, but there's not really a commitment behind it. I think for a commitment to take root, we need to ritualize it and make it an ongoing process of commitment. And in 2016, I realized that we did that. Do you remember 2016? There was an election then. And not everyone was happy with the results. And some people were positively scared by the results. But then there was that element of putting on a safety pin. Remember that? You put on a safety pin to show you were an ally, if you were a person of colour, if you were part of the LGBTQ community, if you were an immigrant, if you were a person at risk who was being targeted as a result of that election, you could put on a safety pin. So what I did in the congregation that I was serving at the time, we ritualized that actually in worship. We did put on a safety pin, and for those who had more vulnerable identities, you could put it secretly so that you were reminded of it, but you weren't exposing yourself to greater risk. And we did a litany in the church when we did that. And here's the litany as we put it on, and then we did that. I encouraged people to do it, and I did it every day for 6 months. I said these words: if you wear a hijab, I'll sit with you on the bus. If you're trans, I'll go to the bathroom with you if you want me to. If you're a person of color, I will be with you if the police stop you. If you're a person with disabilities, I'll hand you my megaphone. If you're an immigrant, I'll help you find resources. If you're Native American, I'll support you in protecting your water, your burial grounds, and your people. If you're a survivor of sexual assault, I will believe you. If you're a refugee, I will make sure you're welcome. If you're a veteran, I'll take up your struggle. If you're LGBTQ, I'll remind you that you are beautiful and beloved as God made you. If you're a woman, I'll interrupt when you're harassed. If you're tired, me too. If you need a hug, I've got an infinite supply. If you need me, I will be with you. All I ask is that you're with me too. That was a commitment that was made. And I think if we ritualize our commitments, if we ritualize what we are hoping for in the future, it grounds into our very being. It's that reorientation of our spirit. It's that reorientation of our heart that Václav Havel talked about. And the litany finished with, together we'll answer the call of love. That central proponent of Unitarian Universalism, of putting love at the center. We're grounding our litany, we're grounding our action, we're grounding our commitment in love. Because hope is effectively a desire with anticipation. We have something we are hoping happens as a result of our commitment. And you know, that can be a statement, that litany, it can be smaller. I saw a beautiful thing in the worship packet for this month in Choosing Hope about committing to spreading positive gossip. Committing to spreading positive gossip. Negative gossip's fun and it connects people, but it can be incredibly destructive. What about pointing out the good deeds like Jason did from the pulpit here about all the things that went on in this church that was successful? Spreading that. What about spreading positive tales of strangers who we've encountered, lifting up unrecognized, admirable qualities of those close to you? How about making that commitment as a start to spreading positive gossip? And I'll ask a little extra, because I'm always pushing the boundaries here, not spreading negative gossip. Maybe that's even the starting point. Because the point about doing that, it alters ourselves, and it alters those around us. We've all said it to children. Well, if you say something negative about someone, they might say something negative about you. We all say that. It alters our attention by making that commitment to something hopeful, something life-affirming, something life-positive. It alters our orientation, and it alters the orientations of all those around us. Yet we need to do this with an honest understanding of the past and our present circumstances, and find positive stories to help envision a better future. We need to be telling positive stories. What we choose to emphasize in our worldview will determine our lives. hope is ultimately what vision of the possible we want to live in at this time. Religion should open our bounds of hope beyond the reality of the present and help show the variety of future possibilities that we can commit our actions, our word, our time, our money to. That is what we mean by committing to hope.